Good morning and welcome to Tools for Success, Conversations to Grow Character. My name is Christy Hazeltine. I'm the Director of Admissions here at the Bear Creek School. Thank you for joining us this morning on your busy Saturday, busy weekend. We are glad you are here. This is Bear Creek's 12th annual Tools for Success seminar series. Years ago, we identified that parents were hungry and eager for parenting tips and tips on academic success to help their children succeed academically, and thus Schools for Success was born. Over the years, the name and format of the series has changed slightly, but the goal and purpose and vision have remained the same, and that is to share topics from our areas of expertise such that parents are equipped with tools to better understand their children and to gain additional parenting skills. So thank you again for joining us this morning. I'd like to start the morning in prayer. Would you please join me? Father God, thank you for this morning. Thank you for this event and these parents who you have given the responsibility of raising their precious children. Having raised children myself, I know that parenting is hard work, and so thank you that Bear Creek desires to come alongside of parents and partner with them to develop the hearts, the minds, and the characters of these children. I pray for your presence this morning, that you would open our minds to learn new things, and that you would bless our speaker's words so that she in turn may bless each one present. Please give us your strength and speak to us as we carry out the responsibility and privilege of working with you to develop godly character in our children. In your son's name, I pray. So it is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker this morning, Karen Blankenbeckler, Vice President of Academic Affairs here at Bear Creek. Karen has had a long career at Bear Creek. She was one of our earliest employees. She started as a kindergarten teacher and then moved into the lower school division head role. And more recently, she is the Vice President of Academic Affairs. Karen has over 30 years of experience in education. She holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in elementary education and an MA in curriculum and instruction. So I am confident that you will find her presentation this morning helpful, insightful, and very engaging. Karen?
Good morning, everyone. We're so glad you've joined us this morning, and we look forward to sharing some time with you today. And as Christy said, I've been in education for a long time, and it's just a privilege to be able to spend time with you this morning and share with you. We really do care about children, and good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us today, and we look forward to sharing with you as we go. We really believe that each child is made in God's image and therefore has value and worth because of that. Am I freezing? I'm not sure what's happening. I think my camera keeps freezing, so we'll try to see what technical difficulties we're having here. Pete, do you have an idea that will resolve this?
I think we did. The camera keeps freezing, so when it freezes, I'll just keep putting your picture back into putting you back in. When your camera freezes, it knocks you out of the presentation, but when it unfreezes, it comes back in.
Okay. Would it help if I switch to my slideshow?
Sure. It looks like your slide might not be on slide 1, though.
I see that. Let's see. I can't make it switch either.
Oh, with Alt-Tab?
There we go. It's switched now. So Pete, if you can just let me know if for some reason people can't hear me, but otherwise I'll keep going.
Okay.
You
All right.
break
Sounds good.
if they can't hear me. But so we really do believe that God made these children and they have value and worth because of that. And we want to invest in the lives of children by partnering with you as you parent them. So thank you so much for joining us. And I did start studying early childhood education way back a long time ago in my college years. And then I've just continued to be fascinated with learning how to help children grow and how to build their character and how to support both educators and parents in helping their children grow. So it's been an amazing journey, and I'm thrilled to be able to be here with you today and share information with you and some tips. Here's a little picture of my family. I have 4 children and they are grown now. But one of the things I'm so thankful for is the Lord gave me 4 children who are very different from each other. And I love that because I can relate to a lot of different parents and the things that they are experiencing with their children, and some of the ups and some of the downs and some of the things that are easy with one or the other. But raising 4 children, I will not claim to be an expert, and I made lots of mistakes. But thankfully, one of our greatest tools is learning from our mistakes and improving on that. So I have some tips to offer you that actually come from mistakes I made and things that I tried that also worked. And so I'm really excited to share some of those things with you today. One of the things I would love for you just to stop and pause and take a minute to think about this morning is really, who do you want your child to be? And it's kind of fascinating that when that question was asked 100 years ago, the answer almost always had to do with character. Some of these things on the screen, people would say they want their child to love learning, be wise, be knowledgeable, be a person of character, be resilient and diligent and kind and honest, and be a person of faith who values their relationship with God. And when asked that question in this generation, the answer can be quite different. It can be that a parent now sees their role to keep their child safe and free from harm, both emotionally and physically. And there's nothing wrong with the goal to keep your child safe. And also another common theme is to keep your child happy. And so you can kind of imagine the lens that you look through as you're parenting your child. If you see your primary role as a parent to keep your child happy and safe, you would approach things really differently than if you were continually thinking about, how do I help my child grow in character? How do I help them become kind, honest, resilient, wise people? So we're going to focus on some of those things today as you help your child grow in character. And if you want to just, as we go, maybe jot down some notes of some things that you're thinking about with your child in particular. When we go through this, if you have more than one child, you may want to just focus in on one of them for today and set some goals for that one child. Or if you think you can do it, maybe pivot between your different children and their personalities and the things that you really want to work on developing in them. But try to set a goal. Try to set a goal of an area that you would really like to invest in this next year to help your child grow in character. So we're going to start off by sharing some ideas of conversation in the challenging moments. So challenging moments are usually those moments that come with some amount of emotion. So it perhaps would be disappointments, or hurt, or anger, or frustration, disagreement, defiance. Those are moments where there's emotion involved in communicating with your child. So most of our tips today are going to come from those moments, conversation in those challenging moments. But don't forget to plan when you have non-challenging moments, what kinds of conversations you want to have with your children. And those conversations are important too. But when we were in the emotional conversations, disappointment, hurt, anger, those are the times that we have to have strategies that work, because we usually don't do our best thinking when we're emotional. Our children aren't doing their best thinking. If they're emotional, that often rises the emotion in us, and we don't often do our best thinking. So some of these strategies that we're going to talk about today are good to try, to practice them over and over, so that they're at the ready to use when the moments come up to use them. So take it slow, take a few strategies away from this today, and commit to a few that you're going to give a try and try to put into place. So, and then one other thing I really wanted to say as we start through these strategies: consider your child's personality and temperament. And I have a good friend and a colleague, Denise Peeler, and she is a expert in child personality, and she gives a fantastic presentation on personality and temperament, and it will actually be one of our tools events coming up this year. So please look for that. Denise is one of the best I've heard present on this topic, and she will really help you with that. But a few things you might want to think about as we go through this today, and even right now: would you consider your child more driven or more laid back? And the reason I ask these things is because your approaches to parenting are going to vary depending upon your child's needs and your child's personality. So some of the tips I give today, you're going to say, I think that's the opposite of what my child needs. And some of them are going to really resonate with you, and you're going to say that one would work. So consider their personality. The next one is, are they a thinker or a feeler? And this is an important one to try to figure out with your child. We all are thinkers and feelers. We have brains to think, and we have feelings and emotions that we're given by God, but some of us lead out a little bit more with one or the other. We think first, and then our feelings come behind, and some of your children really have deep feelings that come first, and then their thinking comes a bit behind. Think about whether your child enjoys change or really struggles with change, because that's an important component as you parent your child. And are they strong-willed versus compliant? So a lot of the strategies that we're going to talk about today, tips, that will be important for you to consider on which tip works the best for you. And as I said earlier, I had all of these different personality types in my children, and definitely found what worked for one wasn't necessarily the best strategy to use with the other. So keep those things in mind as we go, and maybe jot down some notes as we go. So here are the basic conversation tips that we're going to cover today: showing empathy, avoid arguing, engage cooperation, encourage autonomy, and give praise. We're going to work through those today, and we're going to go through them one by one. So the first one that I want to talk about is showing empathy. And showing empathy is really important in the emotional moments. So this one is not necessarily always easy for me when it's one of my children being emotional, because it takes a lot of patience and it takes a lot of slowing down. So when your child comes to you in an emotional state, it's really important for that to trigger in you. Your first role is to show empathy, and showing empathy can really avoid a lot of misunderstandings, and it can also avoid really escalating the situation. So when they come to you, they're angry, they're upset, they're sad, kind of trigger something in your brain that says, oh yeah, I'm supposed to show empathy first. And we'll walk through a few things on what that empathy could look like. So I would say, first of all, really listen. Don't try to jump right into solutions or ideas. Your first step when they come to you emotional is to try to listen. Ask questions to clearly understand what's going on with them, and communicate you care. Try to avoid telling them how they ought to feel. or how you would feel, and really just listen and ask them questions, and then you can really care about them in that situation, because you can tell they're angry or they're hurting or they're upset, and come alongside them and care for them. And then the next step is really important. Help them determine what they can control and what they cannot control. And so some of the things we cannot control still make us sad. They make us discouraged. They make us angry. And there's no control over those things. But what could they do that they do have control over? That can be really empowering and really help them move forward in that empathetic stage. And then encourage them to take action on the things they can control. We're going to go through a few examples of showing empathy in a situation. So imagine this, and this is a what to avoid example of showing empathy. So imagine your child comes to you and says, "My hamster died." And as the adult, we may be tempted to say, "Now don't get so upset, we can get another hamster," because often we're trying to right away jump in and fix it. Or we put it in our adult terms and think that shouldn't be that big a deal. Child starts sobbing harder because you're not showing that this matters to you, and they really think it matters, and they're really sad about it. So their emotions tend to escalate instead of de-escalating. Parent might say, "You're being unreasonable. This is not that big of a deal." What's going to happen with the child? They're probably going to sob even harder because you're still not getting that this matters, and they're really upset about this. And that escalates it even more until the parent gets to the point where they say, "Okay, that's it. Go to your room. Don't come out until you stop being so ridiculous about this." I don't know if that resonates with any of you as a situation that could happen in your home, but it might just go that way. So let's look at an example of how it might go instead. Showing empathy in that exact same situation. So the child comes in and says, "My hamster died," and the adult might say, "Oh no." Pause a little bit. Let the child do the talking next. See where they go next. Child might say, "He was my friend." Adult, "To lose a friend can hurt." Child, "I taught my hamster to do tricks." Parent, "You had fun together." Child, "I fed him every day." You really cared for your hamster. Often that's all it takes, is that little bit of empathy, that coming alongside them, helping them do the talking of explaining how they're feeling, and then you're caring for them in that moment instead of discounting their feelings and asking them to feel the way you might feel in that situation. Let's do one more example of showing empathy. So your child says, "I want Cheerios for breakfast and we don't have any." The parent says, "Well, we don't have any. Have something else." So right away, not empathetic that that child wants Cheerios for breakfast, and telling them what to think or how to think. Child, "I want them. I want them." Parent, "Have eggs for breakfast." Child, "No." Parent, "Now you're acting like a baby." And you probably know we want to avoid name calling, but sometimes when we get emotional and we're frustrated in those moments, those kinds of words come out, and those are words we want to avoid. So let's try an example of what showing empathy in that situation might look like. So the child says, "I want Cheerios for breakfast." Parent says, "Oh, I wish I had some for you." Child, "But I want them." Parent, "I hear how much you want them." Child, "I wish I had them now." Parent, this is where humor can often de-escalate things. "I wish I had the magic power to make a giant box of Cheerios appear for you." Child, "Maybe I'll just have eggs instead." So this is just a little example of how this conversation might go. It doesn't always resolve this easily, but you can see how you're taking the tension out of the moment. You're empathizing with them instead of challenging them. You're not telling them what to think or how to think. You're coming alongside them and encouraging them in a moment that is difficult for them, whether or not we as the adults think not having Cheerios should be difficult. They are finding difficulty in the situation, and you are showing empathy. So just a couple examples of how those conversations might go in showing empathy. The next strategy I'd love to talk with you about is avoiding arguing. And this can be a tough one. I'm wondering how many of you have a child who's an arguer. Remember, I had 4 children, and one of my 4 children loves to argue. And I say loves to argue because that trait has not stopped just because they're grown up now. But he would argue about anything. Just enjoys a good argument. Sometimes he didn't even disagree, but just enjoyed arguing. So he would come to me in the morning and say, should I wear a jacket to school today? Because I can't decide. And if I said, yeah, I think maybe you should. I think it's going to rain. Want to know what he would say? I'm not going to wear a jacket then. I don't think I need a jacket. If I said, I don't think you need a jacket, he would say, well, but I think it might rain. I'm going to wear my jacket. So it was just the way he was wired. He liked to create an argument, and those arguments could sometimes escalate and be frustrating on both ends. So whether or not you have a child who is naturally argumentative or not, we sometimes fall into the habit of arguing. It happens to all of us. And so here are some ideas of ways that you might avoid arguing. The first one is, and super, super important, is help them solve their own problems rather than us telling them what to do. So this is a really important strategy. This comes from Love and Logic, and it could be used in a lot of different situations, but definitely is an important one to avoid arguing. So let's imagine that same scenario I talked about earlier. My son comes and says, should I wear a jacket to school? And I say, yes, because I think it's going to rain. Instead of that, I maybe could try, well, what do you think you should do? And put it back on him to solve his own problem. That's a really important strategy. We want kids who can solve their own problems instead of arguing about it. Here's what I think you should do. Here's what you think you should do. Really challenge them. Ask the question, what do you think you should do? Next, how do you think you could solve this is a really great question to ask kids to avoid arguing. And then last, here's a really good one to hang on to. How do you think that will go? Because sometimes kids, when they're in the arguing phase, they want to argue against what you're saying because they want some control. They want some control over the outcome, and they might argue just for the sake of arguing. They just want to pick something that's contrary, or they just want to pick their own opinion. But that very last question, how do you think that will go, is a really important question for them to contemplate. So let's go back to my son's question of, should I bring a jacket to school? If he says, and I say, I don't know, what do you think? And he says, well, I don't know. I don't really want to bring a jacket because I sometimes get hot, and then I have my jacket on and I'm hot. So I might try that next question, which is, how do you think you could solve this? And he might say, oh, well, I guess I could take it off when I'm hot and maybe just leave it in my classroom, or leave it or wrap it around my waist. Or perhaps he says, I'm not going to bring my jacket then. I think I'll leave my jacket. And then my next question might be, how do you think that will go? This helps him weigh out the consequences of the choice he just decided he was going to make. And he might say, well, I think I might get really cold. Never mind, I'm gonna bring my jacket. So this is just a little technique about problem solving. We think problem solving is one of the best tools you can give to your children. And so try some of these strategies. I love this quote from Love and Logic, which is, wise parents often ask, how are you going to solve this problem? They know that kids who solve their own problems become adults who create fewer problems for the world. So keep that in mind. One of the most important techniques you could take away from today is helping kids solve their own problems. So we've talked about showing empathy. We've talked about avoiding arguing. And the next strategy I'd like to talk about is engaging cooperation. So again, these are times when your child might be frustrated, might want to argue, might be upset, and we want to engage cooperation. So I'm going to introduce 3 strategies to you to help engage cooperation, and some of these might really resonate with you. Some of these might be a strategy that you say, oh, I'm going to take that away, and I think that one might work. Other strategies, given your child's personality and temperament, you might decide that's not a good strategy for my child. Either way, that's fine. You might want to take one away. You might not. You might want to give it a try and see if it works, if it's something you haven't tried before. But just kind of trying to build up your toolbox of parenting skills so that you have some things to try out at home. So the first strategy is give information. And so here's how that would go. Instead of the parent saying, that's disgusting, you let the toothpaste squirt all over the counter, you live like a pig. How many times have we experienced something like that, where our child is not being as tidy as we'd like them to be, or they're not caring for their things, or they're doing something that's really messy? Instead of that long sentence and drawing conclusions and giving them a name, like you live like a pig, try this. Just a simple give them information. Putting the lid on the toothpaste prevents a messy counter. Is this going to solve everything? Are they going to forevermore remember to put the lid on the toothpaste and you'll never have a messy counter again? Probably not, but think about the tone of the two. The one is, that's disgusting. You let the toothpaste squirt all over the counter. You live like a pig. That is not a pleasant engagement, is it? But the next one, you just stay calm, you just give information, and you really accomplish more than you accomplished in the first one, because you're saying it calmly in a way that your child can hear. So putting the lid on the toothpaste prevents a messy counter. You're giving them information that will help guide their wise decision going down the road. So one other one on that strategy, instead of, it would be nice if you thought of picking up your toys when you were finished. Why do I always have to remind you? Every day I have to remind you to pick up your toys over and over again, and I wish you would just pick up your toys on your own. That's one way it could go. Try this. Just a quick give them information. When you pick up your toys, you can go outside. Just leave it at that. And your interaction is going to be much more pleasant, and you'll probably accomplish engaging their cooperation better with that strategy. Our next strategy is say it with a word. And this is a little similar to the give information, because you're just simplifying your response and you're staying calm without having to say a lot. Especially for our introverted children, we tend to explain things way too much for them. They're on word overload. And besides, sometimes those long explanations hold a lot of our own emotion in them. So say it with a word strategy goes like this. Instead of saying, every day I have to remind you to grab your lunch. This is your responsibility, not mine. I have other things to think about and shouldn't have to remind you every day to take care of your things. You should be more responsible. Try this. Jimmy, your lunch. Which one do you think would more accomplish what you're trying to get, which is for Jimmy to grab his lunch when he goes out the door? They're both very will accomplish a similar thing. The second one will engage your child's cooperation much more effectively. Say it with a word. Here's one more example. How many times do I have to tell you to share with your little sister? You shouldn't be so selfish. There are plenty of toys for you to give one to your little sister and have others to play with. Your child has probably heard the importance of sharing from you before, and in this moment, they probably just need a quick reminder, probably don't need a lecture, probably just need you to set an expectation for what you expect from them as a parent. That doesn't mean you will never explain to them why sharing is important or why they ought to share with others. Take moments to do that, but in moments of escalated emotion, that is not the best time to explain something. That is not the best time to give them life lessons or a big long lecture. So try this, just Sarah, share, say it with a word in those moments where emotions are high. So one more strategy for engaging cooperation, and that is write a note. Now, sometimes writing things out can be much more powerful for whatever reason than saying it over and over to kids. There's something about it being written down, being able to read it through and notice it and remind. It can take away from that kind of nagging feel and engage cooperation in a much more productive way. So here's a few examples. Take your shoes off and put them in the closet. A little note that is right by the door, right where they normally enter, and you want to remind them to take their shoes off instead of nagging them or saying it over and over. Put a little note right there that reminds them to take their shoes off. Another one, as you're getting ready for bed, here's a little note that reminds you what to do tonight. Brush your teeth, read for 10 minutes, lights out. You can even create it as a little checklist, like here's your list for bed tonight, without saying a whole lot. And you might find you engage their cooperation so much better. There's just something fun about I've got my little note, I can check off, I brush my teeth, I read for 10 minutes, and now I see it's time for lights out. It's clear, it's simple, and it's engaging cooperation without conflict. And then the last one is a little bit longer note. You might tuck in something as they're getting ready to go somewhere or as they're getting ready for something. I know you have a lot to think about. That's a little bit of empathy there in the morning, but don't forget your things before you go out the door. Love, Dad. Imagine a child receiving that note rather than a frustrated, I am so frustrated because he always forgets his things. Why can't he be more responsible and take his things in the morning? A quick little note that shows empathy, shows care, and gives a quick little reminder might be the way to best engage cooperation. So that's that strategy. So we've covered show empathy, avoid arguing, engage cooperation, and next, let's talk about encourage autonomy. So encourage autonomy is really about helping your children grow in responsibility, grow in confidence, be resilient, and solve their own problems. And this is really important as your child grows up. It starts right away. As they're little, we begin helping them grow in autonomy. From the moment you put that little one in their crib and walk away and help them begin to self-soothe, to calm down on their own, to stay in that bed even on their own and get themselves ready to fall asleep, you're beginning to build autonomy. I can do this apart from my parent, and I'm beginning to build that up. We take little steps in helping them grow in autonomy all the time that they're growing up until they're ready to launch into adulthood. And it's small steps that build and build and build. They still need you. They need their parent, but we want them to begin growing in that autonomy. So taking responsibility, growing in confidence, being resilient, and solving their own problems. So let's talk about a couple common pitfalls in encouraging autonomy. One is doing things for them they could do themselves. I fall into this, I have to confess. Sometimes it's just easier to do it myself instead of getting them to do it. But this is really important. And so just as you think about the day and the common routines you have with your children, think about the things that they could do for themselves instead of you doing it for them. Might be easier for you to do it for them, but building responsibility is a big part of building that autonomy, and then telling them how to solve their problems instead of asking them to solve their problem is another common pitfall. And I just want to stop right here and say, it's as parents, there is something in us that actually we so want to help our children, and it sometimes can build this relationship with our children where we like for them to need us. It is our role to help them. And sometimes we even don't want them to be autonomous because then it seems like they don't even need me anymore. So be careful that you're not falling into that, because you know that it's best for them to learn to grow up, take care of things on their own, solve their own problems, and being too dependent on their parent and needing them is not a healthy dynamic. Obviously, that changes as they grow, as they mature. They need you much more as a small child, and then you want to encourage them to need you less and less and be able to handle things on their own. So a few things that help with encouraging autonomy. One is to offer choices. So always make sure that both the choices that you offer, you are okay with those choices. So example, would you like to wear a jacket or a sweatshirt today? You need to be okay if they choose a jacket or okay if they choose a sweatshirt. We do not offer them choices like, we are getting ready to go to Aunt Susie's wedding. Would you like to wear your pajamas or your dress pants? We don't offer that kind of choice because wearing pajamas to a wedding is not appropriate, and we are teaching our children that that is not appropriate. But saying, would you like to wear these shoes or these shoes to the wedding? You choose is a great time to give them a choice on something like that. A second strategy for encouraging autonomy is to listen and ask questions. So imagine this, the child says, my teacher is mean. Parent, tell me why you think that. They are beginning to form their own views on things, their own reasons for things, their own rationale. It helps give you insight into them and insight into who they're becoming. We discourage autonomy when we so let's go back to that same example. Say this child says, my teacher is mean, and you say, well, that's not okay. Teachers shouldn't be mean. Let me go in and talk to them. That is discouraging autonomy because it tells them that my parent always has to take care of this for me. There may be a time and place you do need to take care of it for them. I'm not saying don't parent your child. I'm not saying don't jump in and help and support when it's needed, but maybe start with, tell me why you think that, and be a good listener and hear more where they're coming from, and then encourage them to figure out what they might be able to do about it. Our last strategy for encouraging autonomy is responsibility. So have you ever had your child say something like this? You forgot to pack my soccer shoes and I got to soccer practice and I didn't have my shoes. I had one of my children who tended to use that type of strategy. It was our fault when something didn't go well. Instead, the parent might say, how will you remember your soccer shoes next time? instead of, it's not my responsibility to pack your soccer shoes, you need to pack your soccer shoes. Next time you need to remember to pack your soccer shoes. So just asking a simple question, how will you remember your soccer shoes next time? Encourages autonomy, encourages that it's my responsibility, and encourages that they have control over things. So we have done show empathy, avoid arguing, engage cooperation, encourage autonomy. And the last strategy I would like to talk to you about is giving praise. And praise for things your child has control over rather than things he or she does not have control over is really important. And I'm going to tell you a little story, and it's going to take a little bit of time, but I think it's one of the most profound stories I have heard, and it is based on the research of Carol Dweck. And if you're not familiar with her, she wrote a book called Mindset, and it's a fantastic book if you want to pick it up. But and she did a study with children, and I'm going to kind of paraphrase the study, but basically here's how it went. She put a set of children into the room along with her researchers, and they gave these children a task to do. And the task was a very difficult task, but as the children accomplished the task, they said to them when they were done, "Wow, you are so smart. We are just amazed. You are very smart children. We've been watching you, and as we saw you solve that task, we can tell that you are smart." They put another group of students in another room, same task, same difficulty, and when those children accomplished that task, instead of telling them how smart they are, they said, "You are such hard workers. We watched you tackle that task and you did not give up. You showed perseverance. Wow, we're really impressed with what hard workers you are." So 2 groups, same task, different type of praise. So then what they did next was they gave a task to each of those groups that was actually impossible to solve. So group number 1, who was praised for being smart, was given this task that is impossible to solve, kind of a mean thing to do to kids, but and those kids, because imagine what was playing in their brain. What was playing in their brain is, "Oh, they're watching me and I'm supposed to be smart. They said I was smart. This task is really hard. I can't figure it out. Does this mean I'm not smart? Does this mean they're going to think I'm not smart?" Those kids gave up very quickly, were very agitated, did not keep at the task for very long, and quit fairly quickly. Go to the other room. They were also given the task that was impossible to complete, but what was in their minds was, they said, "I'm a hard worker." They said, "I have perseverance and stick with things long after the task has begun. So yeah, this task is hard, but I'm going to keep showing that I'm a hard worker. I'm going to keep at it. They said they value perseverance. I'm going to keep showing that I can persevere through this." And those kids reported that this is fun. We want to keep working at it. We want to keep trying. And they worked at it far longer than the group that was told they were smart. Last little bit of the story, they went back to each group. They gave them a task that again was very doable. They could solve it. And guess which group was more successful in completing that task? The group that had been told it's about hard work, it's about perseverance, it's about things that they can control. So just want you to think about that a little bit as you're sharing praise with your child. Try to not praise things they have no control over, like you're a beautiful child or you're so smart. It doesn't mean you shouldn't ever say those things, but when the emphasis is on those things and I have no control over it, that does not encourage growth. So praise things that have to do with their character, praise things that have to do with their choices. Those are all things that they can control and they can grow in and they can really focus on. So try this when your child is doing something. I'm really impressed with the way you keep working to improve and don't give up. Try this. I really appreciate how you show kindness to others around you by helping. Or try this. I noticed you responsibly take care of your own things at the end of the day. Well done. Using praise in that way, you are praising things that they can replicate, they can work at, they can grow in, and they have control over. And that's really empowering for your child. So I want to, before we move to the Q&A time, and if you do have questions, feel free to start putting those questions in the chat. We would be happy to answer your questions in just a little bit, and we will get to those. So feel free to start putting those in, but I wanted to share a couple of resources with you. Some of the things I've shared with you today come from How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk. Great book, and it provides a lot of strategies, including some of the ones I shared today. And then Parenting with Love and Logic is another fantastic resource for you. And as I mentioned earlier, friend and colleague Denise Peeler will do a Tools for Success presentation on personality and temperament that I would highly encourage you to attend. It's one of the best I've seen. So in closing in this session, I just want to say you can't always prepare the road for your child, but you can prepare your child for the road. So we talk about this often at the Bear Creek School. We don't want to go along trying to fix things for our child, paving the road, making everything smooth, making everything perfect. We do want to care for our children, but we can't make everything perfect. So preparing your child to be able to handle what comes their way is so important. And then last, don't forget that God gave these children to you. He had a purpose. It was in his perfect design that he made you the parent. We all feel inadequate at times, or like we've made mistakes, or that we failed in certain areas, but none of those are mistakes in God's eyes. He is good. He chose you, and he loves you and your child, and he walks along beside you. So remember that, and I hope that you find encouragement in that and know that he is with you and he did not make a mistake. So I hope those strategies are helpful. We're going to go ahead and move to Q&A time and answer the questions that you have if you want to put any of those in the question area. And I see a question in there already. It says, what kind of extracurricular activities would you say are character building? That is a great question. I love that question. And you said besides sports, which sports are a good way to encourage that, but anything that requires cooperation is a really good thing to get your children involved in. Drama, music, arts, math team, clubs. Those are all really valuable experiences for your children because they're working together with others cooperatively towards an outcome or a goal, and that really helps build their character. I would also say getting them involved in things where they're giving back to others, giving back to those around them, and investing in other people's lives is really important as a strategy to help them get involved in things. What other kinds of questions do people have? Happy to answer them if anything we said today clicked, or how do you motivate them to put effort in? That is a really good question as well. So I would say keep praising the effort, keep praising the hard work, and keep showing them how their effort actually makes a difference. So that book I referred to called The Mindset, it actually talks about that a lot. And it requires them to see how effort actually affects the outcome. So often we have what we call a fixed mindset, which is I just am who I am. I'm as smart as I am. I'm as good at math as I am. I'm as good at sports as I am, and nothing really is going to make a difference. But when you can show them that their effort, their hard work, their perseverance actually makes a difference in what they're doing, that they begin to create a growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset. And that's what we want for our kids. How do you approach inertia from a child who won't try something because they're afraid they won't be successful? It's easier not to try than to try. I have one of my children is a little bit more that way. He lacks confidence and he has trouble trying things because he doesn't want to fail. He likes to be successful. And so a few things I would say are helpful in that. One is to give them things that you know they can be successful in. So give them opportunities to be successful. This will encourage them and give them buoyancy to be able to try other new things. Also, sometimes you have to just say, I'm going to ask you to give it a try. And if you don't want to do it again, that's okay, but we're going to give it a try just one time. And then you have a choice the next time to say, I don't want to do it again. But we're going to go ahead and give it a try this first time. Sometimes I need to do that with my son. And then once he tries it, he often finds, oh, it wasn't as bad as I thought, or it wasn't as scary as I thought, and I'm willing to try it again. So that's what I would recommend for that. Let's see, what other questions do you have? We'll take a couple more minutes, and if there aren't any other questions, we'll wrap up today, but don't want to miss any if there's something on your mind that you wanted to ask a question about. All right, it looks like we don't have any more questions coming in, so thank you so much. Oh, I just see one. How much can a child's character be influenced by his or her peers? I believe that it can be greatly influenced by their peers. You are the biggest influence in their life, and don't forget that. The parents have the greatest influence. They live with you day in, day out. Whether or not they show it all the time, they love you, they respect you, and you are the biggest character shaper. That being said, friends also, who we are with, and that's true of kids, and it's also true of us, who we are with affect who we are and who we become. And so I would say that doesn't mean, just like we said earlier, you're not making the path perfect for your child. There are no perfect people. There are no perfect friends. So don't wait till you find a perfect friend for your child to hang out with. And they will learn from imperfect people. They'll learn how to handle difficult situations, challenging friendships, and you want them to learn all those things. They have to learn how to handle those difficult things. But if you feel like your child's friends are not bringing out the best in them and are really not helping them grow in character, it might be time to take a little time away. Not telling your child you can't be friends with that child anymore, but spending a little bit more time with other friends who build them up until they're ready to handle a more challenging friend who might not be bringing out the things you're looking for. All right, well, I think, Elise, do we have one more question? Or are we ready to wrap up this section?
Yes, Karen, there's one more at the bottom there.
Okay.
How to teach kids to care for others.
Okay, so this is a good one to really be proactive about. So imagine you're getting ready to go to a relative's house or a friend's house, and there's going to be other people there that would give your child the opportunity to care for someone. To talk about that in advance and prepare them for it is a really great way to practice this. So imagine you're going to your cousin's house and they have a child who's a bit younger than your child or a bit older, doesn't really matter, but even just saying, hey, when we get there, I think it'd be really great for you to show how you could care for Johnny when we get to their house. Can you think of one thing you might do to care for Johnny when we get there? Let them initiate. If they can't think of an idea, you can always suggest, like, hey, well, maybe you could go pick a toy and offer for Johnny to use it instead of you. Maybe you could offer to help them with something and just simply say, Johnny, can I help you with that? Practice it ahead of time, prepare them to use that skill ahead of time, and then watch them put it into place. And this is a great example of praise that builds character. As they put it into place, say, I saw you caring for Johnny. I saw you use that skill. Good job. That was a really great way to show care for somebody else. So sometimes the things that are difficult to develop in your child, it really helps to set them up ahead of time and let them practice those skills. How about a child that feels put down when you correct their homework mistakes? So this would probably take a little bit of helping them know why you're coming alongside them, because if they feel like you're continually criticizing them when they make a mistake, that can make them feel really put down. But if the focus is on, I care about you, I want you to learn, and I'm here to help you learn, that changes the emphasis a little bit, rather than you saying they made a mistake. It's also really important for them to know that mistakes are one of our best learning opportunities. Mistakes are just a chance to grow, and that you make mistakes and you look for how you can grow from it, and that you are really helping them to grow. Sometimes you are not the best person to teach them that lesson. Sometimes you might want to try, hey, sometimes you make mistakes in your math lesson. And what do you think would be a good strategy for how you figure out those mistakes or how you correct those mistakes? Let them solve their own problem, and it doesn't always have to be that you correct their mistakes. Have them solve their own problem. They just might come out with, I think it'd be helpful if Dad helps me with my mistakes. And then they're going to be much more open to you helping them with their mistakes if the idea was their idea to solve that problem. So great question, and I hope that's helpful. And I think we're about out of time here today. So just wanted to again thank you for joining us today. It's I hope some of these tips were helpful, and we love coming alongside you. We hope you join us for upcoming events. And I'm going to say goodbye for now and turn it over to Christy Hazeltine, who will close out our time today.
All right, thank you, Karen. Great tips. And thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning. As Karen mentioned, Denise Peeler's topic, the Tools for Success topic on understanding your child's personality and temperament, that is coming up on Wednesday, October 21st at 9 a.m. We'd love to have you join us. So you can go to our website, RSVP, and hope you can make it. For those of you who are prospective parents, we realized this morning that we have many current Bear Creek families in the audience, but we also have prospective parents that are looking possibly at a Bear Creek education for their child. I'm going to turn it over now to Elisa Watkins. She is our Assistant Director of Admissions for Lower School, and if you apply, she will help you through that process. So Elisa, could you just kind of outline a few things for our prospective parents today? And again, thank you for all who attended.
Thanks so much, Christy, and thank you to Karen for sharing with us this morning. I could have used some of those tips 20 years ago with my boys. As Christy said, I'll be helping families with lower school admissions this year, and I'm looking forward to meeting all of you. I hope you'll apply for admission for your child. You may do so by going to the admissions pages of our website, simply creating an account, then logging into the admission portal where you can sign up for an interview, follow links for admission testing for kindergarten and above, sending the teacher recommendation forms for your child's current teacher, and then all those other required pieces. And of course, if you have any questions along the way, I'm happy to assist you. Please note the following application deadlines that we have this year. For December 14th, that would be for siblings of current Bear Creek students. And then on January 25th, that's our application deadline for all other applicants. And looking ahead for a couple other dates, just so you'll know what to expect. Our admission decision notifications will be emailed on January 19th for the majority of siblings of our current students. And this timing coincides with our re-enrollment season. And then for our preschool applicants, that would be mid to late January. And then for all the other applicants, we'll email those decisions between mid-February and mid-March. Of course, if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to contact me. My contact information is on the admissions tab of our website. And I just look forward to getting to know your family. And again, thank you so much for joining us for this Tools for Success event this morning. I hope you have a great day and have a wonderful rest of your weekend.